Tim O'Malley with Tim Priester from Carter Finley Stadium about 2 hours before kickoff, and we are hit with some inclement weather again, which is our custom when we come to Raleigh for these games, but it looks like it might clear up before game time. And just on the ride over, Tim, you mentioned something. It's funny, for week 3 you're like, boy, I can't wait to cover this game. That's usually like a big game coming up, but this feels like as big as it gets after having Navy and TSU on the schedule.
Yeah, well, it is a big game, and the light poles are not swaying yet anyway, and actually we don't expect there to be high winds at any point, and it's really not supposed to rain during the game. It's starting at noon, but yeah, I mean, this is exciting. This is the biggest game Notre Dame's played up to this point in 2023, and I'm very interested to see how Notre Dame's defensive line holds up against NC State's questionable running game led by the quarterback Brennan Armstrong, and what can Notre Dame's wide receivers do against a pair of good corners. It's really an excellent matchup. I kind of looked at this game as a low-scoring, close game. It's on the road. Any kind of win for Notre Dame would be a good win, and I think they will come out of here with a win today. But they have to play well, because I think NC State will as well.
I think those two matchups are things that most Irish fans can look at and say, can Notre Dame, can the wide receivers be what they think they can be? But, coming in, this is a tough matchup against NC State's cornerbacks. We think the defensive line can hold up, but you brought up one earlier in the week, and I've heard from a couple other people, and I tend to agree we haven't seen the offensive line perform to a level where they can control the game against a quality defensive front like NC State's. As you mentioned all week, NC State just doesn't give up a lot of points. You're not looking at an absolute shutdown defense, but when you're always giving up 24 and 17 and 29, and the most you give up is 30 last year, and a lot of that power up front is back. This is a true test for Notre Dame's offensive line, because if they don't pass this test, that's the reason they would lose the game.
Well, Savion Jackson is back at defensive end for NC State. He joins Davin Vann, and it's a good duo, and this is a really good test for Notre Dame's offensive guards, Rocco Spindler and Pat Coogan. It's their first real significant test. Actually, I thought Tennessee State's defensive line was a little bit more stout than Navy was. So they got a little bit of a taste of it last week, but this is a great test for Notre Dame's offense. And, NC State's been very good against the run. They did give up a 71-yard run last week to UConn, and Notre Dame obviously has running backs that can do something similar.
And that's an important point, because I think no matter how well NC State does against the run, if Notre Dame could have one breakaway run, I think they also still have in them now it's 4 running backs coming in. I think Jabron Payne, Jadarian Price, and Jeremiah Love are going to augment the passing game today. I think Mitchell Evans will be part of the passing game today. They don't have to rely on extricating from those corners on the outside. Sam Hartman will find the open man and have the patience to find the open man.
And I do think NC State's going to have difficulty scoring. I think they believe they can run the football against the interior of Notre Dame's defensive line. They're going to give that a shot. Certainly Brennan Armstrong will slam the line of scrimmage. He likes contact. He will get contact from Notre Dame's linebackers, but it'll be very interesting to see how Notre Dame's defense holds up against a shaky offensive attack. I think both offenses are going to be challenged today by a couple of good defenses.
Well, you mentioned Brennan Armstrong. We've seen him be great. That was 2 years ago, though. We saw him struggle last year. He's going to run the ball fairly well today, and it's one of those. It's almost a given that he's going to run for a couple of first downs. But is it on 3rd and 9? If he runs for a first down on 2nd and 2, we've talked about this. That's just the flow of the game. Can Notre Dame's front 7, especially the linebackers and a little bit of the safeties coming in to help, can they stop him from ripping off a 15-yard gain when it's an untimely play that gets NC State's offense sparked? Because if he runs the ball well, I think it's going to open up their passing game as well. It will, and on
3rd and 9, I mean it's a passing down, but it's a running down for Brennan Armstrong. That's it exactly. And so, it's a great opportunity for Notre Dame's corners, Notre Dame's safeties, their secondary in general, against a receiving core at NC State that still has to prove itself. And I think Brennan Armstrong still has to prove himself against good coverage. If somebody's wide open, I said this earlier in the week, obviously he's going to hit them, and Notre Dame has the corners to defend this wide receiver core for NC State that still has to prove itself.
I think the safeties have impressed us in August camp. They haven't really been challenged in the season, but I no longer look at it as a massive weak link like I did coming out of the spring, because there's depth there. The cornerbacks have to be good. They don't necessarily have to be as good as we said they were going to be. I think they can be. But Notre Dame's corners have to hold up today. The key to that is no corners hold up if your pass rush doesn't get home. And you made a great point on the podcast this week. You also can't you have to spy Brennan Armstrong on the pass rush. So can Jordan Botello or Maris Leofau off the edge. Can Jalen Sneed help there? Can Javante Jean-Baptiste? They're going to have to get to Armstrong. If they do, then it's a huge advantage for the Irish corners.
Well, we saw Al Golden dial up a number of blitzes last week. I don't think he can be as aggressive in doing that with Brennan Armstrong. One last thing that I want to point out, this is a huge coaching matchup for Notre Dame. They're going against an 11-year head coach in Dave Doran. Robert and I, that we know what he does with Brennan Armstrong, the offensive coordinator, and Tony Gibson has slowed down Sam Hartman the last 3 years. So this is a great test for Notre Dame's coaching staff. Marcus Freeman, we'll see if they can answer the bell today.
It's the first true test for Notre Dame's 2023 football season, and barring any weather conditions, anything that pushes us back, we hope to be here about an hour after the game concludes for Irish Illustrated Instant Analysis. And later on tonight, you can catch us on the Irish Illustrated Facebook and YouTube pages for our new podcast, Irish Illustrated Overtime.